Hello and welcome. I'm Mark Crosby, and I'm here today to talk about an event that will be happening at the Thomas Crane Public Library. The presenter, Seema Kenny. She is a professional genealogist, and she's going to join me remotely via Zoom. Seema, thanks for joining me here today in studio. I say in studio, you're on my laptop. I know you're at home. I'm in the QATV studio. It's amazing what technology does or can do.
We've learned a lot the last 3 years, haven't we?
Absolutely. And I know genealogy, this access via computers has been, a big change and help for genealogists out there, or simply folks looking to find out about family history.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, a lot more people picked it up during the pandemic, which is great.
Maybe nothing else to do, right?
That's exactly right.
So, a professional genealogist, explain that. What does that mean, and how do you use that to host programs?
Well, I took a class at Boston University in 2010. I do have a certificate in genealogical research. I network. I dove right into the deep end of the pool here, Mark. So I belong to 6 or 7 different societies. I have an office in at least half of those. I go to a lot of meetings. I network with a lot of other genealogists. Most professional genealogists, the first thing they say they're going to do is, of course, they'll do research for other people. I tried that and decided I didn't really like it. So my business is really built around educating people and writing articles and books. So that's just where I'm comfortable.
And what's your favorite part of genealogy?
Oh, I love finding the stories of, what people did and not just the dates, but what did they do in between the dates and how they lived and, trying to decide whether they were on the cutting edge of technology, whatever that was at the time, or, hanging back and waiting for everybody else to test it out first.
So when people approach you and they're interested in finding out about their family history, what do they tell you? What sparked an interest?
Some people will. Some people, I'm just curious. I have the time now. There's 101 reasons why you get started. But, the best place to start is always in your own home. Gather up all the birth announcements, the obituaries, the funeral cards, all those things that you have for family members, and put those in order first. Because you'll be amazed how much information you can gain just from your own bookshelves, boxes, and closets.
Well, I'm going to ask, too, how much is out there as public knowledge, and how much do you simply have to delve deeper?
Oh, most of it you have to delve deeper, because what most of us find is, the things that have been digitized are either from the colonial era or they're from the 20th century. So when you're looking for those 18th or 19th and 20th century records and things, those are still offline for the most part. And you may have to go to the town hall and the library and the historical society and any place else, cousins' houses and whatever else you can find where you might find some of these things. And you have to be creative sometimes on what you might find and how you can fill in some of the details.
So I guess it goes without saying that obviously advances in technology has made this, the search easier, I suppose, although there's probably avenues out there that I think one can probably get overwhelmed.
Oh, absolutely. And it has made it easier from the standpoint of you're not as much stuck on a schedule. You can do things when the regular libraries and things are closed. But on the other hand, you can only do from home what somebody else has digitized. So if the town has not digitized their records, you've still got to go to that town and look at everything in person.
So you mentioned libraries, you mentioned historical societies. What are some of the other places that folks can gather information about their history?
Um, well, obviously, of course, talking to relatives is a big one. You know, ask what they know, have them help you identify photographs or remind you where a photograph was taken, what was the occasion. Um, I always say it's always good to ask somebody else because everybody remembers the event differently. So I know just my sister and I, a lot of times, if we're talking about something, I'll say it's black. She said it was white. I know we grew up in the same house. We were at the same party. How we remember it so differently, it just amazes me. So getting somebody else's opinion that was also there is always very valuable.
And obviously, folks can do this on their own, or they can hook up with someone like you. So if they decide to work with you, how does working with you provide a benefit, I suppose?
Well, it's always good to have a second pair of eyes. You know, I'm sure most of us have had this experience that I have all the time. I get stuck on something and I start talking to somebody, and halfway through my description, I'm like, "Oh, I figured it out." It's it's that talking, it's presenting it in a different manner to somebody else, and sometimes it's just somebody who's been doing it for a while and has some experience may offer you some other path that you just didn't think about. You know, uh, I know, or they may know some history. I had a class several years ago now because we haven't done in person things. Um, Somebody was looking for something in Maine. And I said, well, and she's like, I've looked and I looked and I can't find it. And I said, well, what dates are you looking for? And it was like the 1700s. I said, there was no Maine in 1700. They were part of Massachusetts. And when she came back a week later for the next class, she was like, I found it, no problem. So sometimes it's just that little like, wait a minute, did you forget this? Did you forget that? Little teeny facts that can make a big difference because you want to make sure when you're looking for a needle in a haystack that you're looking in the right haystack.
And certainly someone to keep you on track, and that's a perfect example of that.
Absolutely. And that's what societies are great for, too. You know, there's at least 15 different genealogical societies in Massachusetts. So there should be one that's fairly close to most any of your listeners, viewers. So, it's always worth joining because you're going to meet people that have the same hobby. Who knows? You may meet a cousin that you didn't know you before.
Well, this leads me to the question of travel, and I suppose travel could be involved for the person searching.
Oh, absolutely. I still have relatives in most of the towns where my, at least grandparents and great grandparents left. So it's always fun to go back. And I have cousins there that can show me around and things. But definitely traveling to other places to find, more local history and everything. I'm hoping to get to Europe next year and visit some family places in Europe. So we'll see.
And as far as how much time it will take, I guess it depends on how far people are willing to go or how deep a person's willing to look.
Yeah, I mean, it'll take as much time as you can give it. Again, yeah, you're right. I've gone 10 generations back on one line and I haven't left the United States. So I'm back to the 1600s and, someday I'll add some more to that. But you just, pick your focus and decide what you want to do.
Now I have
If
to
you
ask,
can only do a couple generations, that's still better than not doing any. So.
absolutely. I have to ask, any personal experiences, clients you've worked with that found out they were related to a historical figure?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I did do one family history for a friend. He wanted to give it to his mother. I think it was her 80th or 90th birthday, whatever. And they actually then used it he would keep driving different places and showing her where her ancestors lived. And they had a big connection to Salem, Mass, and also to Plum Island. So it gave them, some places to go visit, some things to do together. As we get older, it's a little harder to find those kind of unique things to do. So
Well,
it was a great way to prop up what their activities.
absolutely. That sounds like a great way to plan a trip. Plan a trip based on finding out about your family history.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What about folks that might be concerned about what they could find out? How do you approach that?
Well, my philosophy is you're learning facts. Facts are facts. Um, the one question that a genealogist can hardly ever answer is why. Why did they do this? Why did they do that? We're just not going to know because we're not going to know enough about the actual moment and all the things they were thinking about when they made that decision. We just kind of have to go in and accept that, look, they did what they did. And if they hadn't done it, we wouldn't be here. So we have to be thankful that they did what they did. And, the line got to us at some point.
Well, and I think if you take it as it is in history, then it simply maybe lacks the personal connection, I guess. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but if you look at it as a study as opposed to whatever the event was that could have happened that might have been not so good in the past.
We have to forgive people for things they did that we wouldn't have done. We also have to remember, if we're doing family history, that, we look at everything based on the eyes we have for today, 2022. And that's not what life was like in the 1800s, 1700s. So it is sometimes hard to understand what was done because we just can't comprehend not having the things we have today, whether that's the electricity or the medical. It's very upsetting to look at a large family and see how many children died before they were 5. But then again, they didn't have CVS on every corner and a cabinet full of medicines in their house, so you do have to kind of be able to put yourself into that same setting
So
to
I would
put it
say,
in context.
and very heavy, obviously, on the history, but people that approach you, whether at presentations like we will be speaking about in just a moment, or those that do it on their own, inadvertently become interested in history.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the best things about genealogy is whatever type of history you're interested in, you can use that as your focus. If you're interested in architecture, then fine, research addresses, see if you can find pictures of all the ancestors' homes so that you can talk about their architecture. Get the information you want about the buildings that they lived in, that they worked in, that they built, whatever. You can just pick anything that interests you and kind of trace it back.
I think on your website you mentioned clothes styles or hairstyles. I mean, it could be something as narrow as that.
Right, and those are great ways to help identify when a photograph was taken and who might be in the photograph and things like that by looking at their clothes, their hairs, their furniture. But it is a unique niche for doing that.
Absolutely. You will be presenting as part of the Family History Research Series, Following the Trail of Shared Matches.
Right. So shared matches are part of your DNA test results. You get a list that, you share DNA with this group of people. And the talk is actually, the first time I gave it, I started out by saying, yes, this is that hated assignment in school, how I spent my summer. 4 years ago, I blocked off 3 weeks of my calendar and I said, I am going to do this. I am going to trace my mother's missing father with these DNA results. And so that's the story, or the presentation is actually how I did that. So several tools that I used along the way to actually come close. I've got it down to 3 brothers. I just don't know quite which of the 3 brothers it is, but I know for sure it's one of the 3 of them.
One of the things you had mentioned, as people grow older, family history, would you say, becomes more important to them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most people are like, I wish I had written down the stories my mother and my grandmother told me. I wish I had paid more attention. I have an aunt that's in her 80s now, and she's always telling me, her mother lived with them most of their life. And she's always saying, I wish I had written more notes about what mom had told me. Now, she's an only child and has no descendants. So, it doesn't even matter how much family you have. People just miss the stories and they want to be able to pass them along to a few other people. So,
And
and it's part of it is that, as you get older, you feel like, oh, I've retired. Now I have the time to do this.
well, it's funny, you might not, I have an 18-year-old son, and I can't really say that, and I can speak for myself here too, that back when I was in school, that history was ever that important to me. It just seemed very dry. But now I have a renewed interest, and most of the books I read are of a historical nature. So I think as one gets older, maybe history it becomes more interesting, and I wish I had paid more attention, I suppose, when I was in grade school, but that's probably not uncommon.
I don't think it's uncommon, and I think a lot of it has to do with how we were taught history. Today they have a lot more information, they have a lot more tools. My husband and I do the same thing. We watch something on the History Channel and we're like, why didn't they teach it like this when we were kids? We had, the old film strips, Advance at the Beep and memorize this list of dates and whatever. And that wasn't really a fun way to learn history. It is a little more fun when you can say, I know my great 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 grandfather was in this battle or was in this, and I want to go find out what I can about them. It does make it a lot more interesting.
To folks that are watching this interview, what can you tell them about, I suppose, what they would expect at the Thomas Crane Library presentation?
There will be a handout, so you don't have to take notes, but you're welcome to take notes. I usually get there at least a half an hour ahead of time. I forget exactly what time the library closes, so I don't know how much later than that I can stay, but they will have my contact information. I'm happy to have them contact me and ask questions, even long after the presentation. I never mind answering emails and trying to help somebody else with their work.
Well, Seema, I want to thank you for joining me here at QATV via Zoom. So thank you for zooming in, so to speak. Fascinating, and I certainly would expect for you to have a lot of folks attend the Thomas Crane Library series.
I hope so. We've had good turnouts in the past, so hopefully, we can get past this pandemic and people feel comfortable being in a room with others.
Absolutely. Well, happy hunting.
Thank you. You too.
And thank you at home for watching. This has been a cooperative program of the Quincy Thomas Crane Public Library and Quincy Access Television. Please continue to watch Local Access TV for more locally produced programming.